Yes, we see the slide.
Awesome.
Okay. Okay. I
So
guess
we are going
mine's
to start ourselves off with this video for you all. And I'm just going to move us to full screen.
Hi, my name is Donette Rayom. I'm a Native American girl, and today you're about to get schooled.
We've evolved and, not all of us lived in teepees.
Teepees were made for only travel uses.
Well, we own one, but we don't live in it.
We don't live in it.
We just camp in it whenever we want to.
We use them for things like ceremonies or camping and such, but we don't live in them. I have to say to that, where is my check?
We really don't get anything for free. Everything we get, we have to work for it just like everybody else. If we had free healthcare, then the diabetes and heart disease rate would be very, very low. But at this point in time, it's very high.
Our dad works to provide for us. We don't get like money or anything.
We get schooling for free. That's not true either. We have to meet the same academic requirements as any other ethnicity.
We still have to apply for scholarships.
I thought it was just Donald Trump that didn't pay taxes.
If we were rich off of casinos, why would we need government money?
I think that we just mostly lose our money to casinos. We all gamble.
Not all Native Americans wear headdresses. In some tribes, they don't wear them at all.
In my tribe, we don't wear headdresses, and we never did.
Women don't wear headdresses, and you have to earn them.
It wasn't just given to them or handed down to them. You have to earn every feather that makes up that headdress. If you were to buy a headdress, that would be disrespectful because there's no meaning behind it. You didn't do anything to earn it. All you did was pay for it. That's racist.
And a lot of people say that the redskin term comes from the color of our skin, but if you look at me, I'm not red.
Society is just played into it like the word redskins is okay when it's not.
The word redskin came about from the scalping of Native Americans. Redskin means the blood that was dripped from down on their faces.
That's a major league sports team, and their argument against changing the name would be just like me having a conversation with my mom, and my mom asked me, "Why don't you like Brussels sprout?" Because I don't.
It's not like we have a mascot that's called White Man.
In a way that's making fun of our culture and who we are. And we're human beings just like everybody else.
Good afternoon, morning, wherever you're at. I am Bernice UP Jordan. I am a citizen of the Fort Peck Sioux Nation. Welcome, all my relations. I am a public health program manager at the Office of Tribal Public Health with the United South and Eastern Tribes. I'm going to read a few audience participation tips. We are building a community. Please introduce yourself in the chat. Please select everyone and let your fellow participants know your name, tribal nation, affiliation, job title, and organization. Important, we value your partnership, and most importantly, for our attendance records, we need accurate data. If you are able, please change your name on the Zoom as well. Everyone will be muted until the audience feedback portion of the hour. During that segment, use the raise my hand icon on Zoom, and the host will unmute you to offer your reflection. You will receive a link to the recording and presentation by the end of the week or two. Next slide. Okay, continuing education information. This activity is jointly provided by United South and Eastern Tribes and Cardia Services. Cardia Services is approved as a provider of nursing continuing professional development by the Montana Nurses Association, an accredited approver with distinction by the American Nurses Credentialing Centers Commission on Accreditation. This activity has been planned and implemented in accordance with the accreditation requirements and policies of the California Medical Association through the joint partnership of Cardia and the United South and Eastern Tribes. Cardia is accredited by the CMA to provide continuing medical education for physicians. The Cardia designates this live web-based training for a maximum of 1 AMA PRA Category 1 credit, TM. Physicians should claim this credit commensurate with the extent of their participation in this activity. Next slide. So completing this activity, upon successful completion, 1 contact hour will be awarded. Will include the following: the attending the entire CE activity, completing the online evaluation available at the conclusion of the meeting in the chat and within the 2 weeks of the event, submitting an online CE request within 2 weeks of the event, and your certificate will be sent via email about this. If you have any questions about the CE activity, please contact H. Abila. Actually, contact myself, bjordan@uset.army.uset.inc. Next slide. So one more thing that I wanted to, can you go back a slide, Lee? I thought we had something else. One thing I wanted to just throw at you, there are certificate of medical education, certificate of continuing nursing, certificate of counseling, continuing educations, and certificate of completions for this. Right now, there was this little fiasco with social work, so there will just be a certificate of completion for this month. So we apologize for that. Next slide. There are no relevant financial relationships with ineligible companies for those involved with the ability to control the context of this activity. Next slide. All right, and I think that is it. Now I want to go ahead and introduce our team, Holly, Ken, and Dr. Vorpal. I don't know who's first. I'll hand it over to you, Holly.
Sure. Hi there, everybody. It's very good to see you all, and I am happy that we always have such a great group today so far: Oklahoma, Texas, Oregon, Arizona, North Dakota, California, Maryland, Alaska, Ontario, Canada. Welcome, our friends. And others will be joining. And I do want to give a personal shout out to Chief Manel from New Hampshire. Good afternoon. We're happy you're with us, and our friend Buzz Danny from South Central in Anchorage, Alaska. Good to see you, Buzz. So today's really special. We're going to talk about something that's really important, and it's part 1. We're going to do it again next month. So there's a part 1 and part 2, and it's specifically about clinical supervision and native trauma exposure in community work and the role of supportive supervision. So the next slide. And of course, you can see our learning objectives to identify psychological and relational risks associated with trauma exposure in community-based work within Native communities. And we're going to provide some basic information on the primary functions of supervision and their relevance in supporting ethical and effective practice. And of course, the last piece will be core principles of trauma-informed supervision. Really super important topic. And next month, we'll focus more on cultural relevance of supervision and supervision as ceremony. So the next slide. So there are the 3 of us. You all know that I'm the creative lead for the Reclaiming series, and really happy to be here with you all. And I don't know if you all want to wait until your sections to do your introduction, Jackie and Ken, or do you want me to just keep going? Let's just keep going, and they'll introduce themselves at the beginning of their sections. So great team of folks. Okay, next slide. So we all know, everyone that's on this call, that there's both joy and challenges when you live and work in the same community. And that's one of the reasons we were thinking about this topic. And we know that if you have a supervisor, which in many tribal communities is not. You're kind of on your own. Um, and if you do have a supervisor, or if you're lucky to have a clinical supervisor, incredibly helpful. But often, in my experience in tribal communities, supervisors get pulled to do other things. They're pulled to write proposals and to do other things, so they're not necessarily available as a support to staff people who are working in the field. Sometimes they are, but often they're not because there's just so much to do and they get pulled to do other things. So the next slide. So I wanted to talk a minute about why we choose to do the work we do. If the work is so challenging, if we put ourselves in at risk of being exposed to trauma, which we do every day in our work. We're working with families that need our help. We're working with families that are sometimes in dire straits. We're working with individuals who may be temporarily at a low point in their life, and and part of our job is to listen to their stories often of trauma. So why do we choose to do this work if it's so challenging? And there's several different reasons that I can think of. One is that for Native people, it's part of our culture, it's part of our beliefs. It's a way that we are, is to help others. Um, and it's our nature. It's in I'm always talking about genetics, and I do think it's in our gene pool to be helpful, to be Native, to help other people in our communities. So to choose the field of social work or a mental health practitioner, it's natural for us. We also relate to the life experiences of people we work with, the people we serve. Sometimes I was thinking that I've had relatives in my family that were early social workers, and you really admire. It's not a job to them. It's something that they have always been since you were a child, watching them support you. And so there's an admiration sometimes for a relative that's really a helpful person. Sometimes it's an encouragement from a teacher. We always remember, I've always said that for young people, a single phrase of encouragement, they will remember that and hang on to that their entire life. So sometimes it's encouragement from a supportive teacher, or it could be a church member. And then we all have, I believe, a deep desire to improve the future of other Native people. And there's many other reasons, I'm sure. And if you feel like putting something in the chat about the reason why we choose the work we do, please put something in the chat. The next slide. But we choose the work we do in the field that we're in because our ability to help outweighs any risk to us as a human. And we know that we are at risk of being exposed to trauma. And as I said before, we're exposed to trauma practically every day. And our training is focused on helping others, gaining the skills and knowledge and experience in how to be helpful to others. Our training is not so much focused on our own self-care and supports that we need. The next slide. So it doesn't matter where our work is. It doesn't matter if it's in remote communities like this Alaska village. And it doesn't matter if it's in an urban Indian area or anything in between. We are always at risk of exposing ourselves to trauma. And then the next slide. So we have our different ways to protect ourselves from harm and from negative energy that we walk into. When I was doing more writing and Native-driven research, I was always conscious of the fact that my family and my tribe always want me to be protected, that they know that I'm walking into communities that may be in great distress or who have had sadly maybe a series of suicides, young people's suicide, or trauma that's happening, villages that have to be moved, all kinds of negative things that have happened to communities and families that we work with. So how do we protect ourselves from absorbing that trauma? That's what my family was concerned about. You know, what can you do, Holly, to not absorb the trauma and carry that with you and then carry it back to your own home life or your own tribe? So different tribes have obviously different ways to support ourselves. Some people uh, who practice ceremony every day may offer their prayers for protection and for support and guidance before they leave home to go into a community. Or some people may smudge themselves, or some people who may not practice ceremony on a daily basis, they or they may have religious beliefs that they ask for guidance and support and protection as they go into these communities. And so we all have different ways to support ourselves. Sometimes people have none of that and they go into communities, they listen to trauma experiences. Maybe it triggers their own past trauma, and they come back to their community and they are walking into a community meeting in their own tribe, and yet someone in their tribe can see them and can almost see that there's uh, pain that they've carried, and they may pull them aside and help them or pray for them or talk with them about what pains you. So there's all different ways. We either proactively protect ourselves based on our own beliefs. Sometimes it's prayer, sometimes it's doing nothing, but somebody recognizes when you come back. Hopefully it would be your supervisor. And we're going to talk about the term supervisor. I don't like the term supervisor personally, and I'll tell you why. I prefer the term mentor or coach. I really don't like the term supervisor, but we'll talk about that. So just think about living and working in your community. The original title of this presentation was going to focus more on it. We included the term, or I included the term, workplace trauma. And what I meant was trauma that we get exposed to when we're doing our work. And I took that term out of the title because it's I didn't want it to be misinterpreted that I'm talking about coworker just being mean to each other. That's not what we meant. We meant working in the community and the risk of being exposed to trauma and negative energy, and how do we protect ourselves. So the next slide is now I'm going to turn it over to Ken Craybill, who is part of our clinical team for the Reclaiming series, and he's going to share a lot of fascinating, great information on supportive supervision.
Holly, while Ken is getting that set up, I just wanted to share that there was some really, really great stuff in the chat from folks talking about what inspires them in the work that they're doing. So we've got lots going on already.
Oh, good. Well, thank you everyone for joining and putting things in the chat. And I'm just kind of scrolling through to see what I see. And Ken is pulling up the PowerPoint. So I am just scrolling down. But you know, we've all had lots of experience in working in tribal communities, and I think you can relate to just kind of my stage setting that I was presenting. And I think Ken's ready. True?
Are you all seeing this slide?
It looks
Yes, we are.
perfect, Ken.
Okay,
Yes.
thank you. Holly, thank you so much. And I'm so grateful to be here and part of this space as a welcomed guest. I've had the privilege of knowing Holly in particular for quite a number of years, and she's been a real mentor for me in many, many ways. I'm also grateful to be here with, may I call you Jackie, Dr. Vorpal? And so we're going to take a team approach here, although some people have said that this is mostly the Ken show today. So please know I'm not trying to usurp Jackie's time. It'll be the Jackie show next time. So, but yeah, I'm a social worker by training. I have worked mostly in homelessness, doing direct service for many years. And it was during that time that I became very, very aware how much trauma existed and had an impact on the work that I did, the folks who I served, and ultimately on my own way of being and practicing. And so I have had the privilege of uh, kind of digging deeper into trauma and providing training around trauma-informed care to folks, as well as the practice of supervision, which I think is critically important for everyone in all realms. And then also combining those two and doing some teaching and training around trauma-informed supervision. And Holly, I'm with you about the term supervision. It literally means to watch over or see over. And so maybe if we can reframe it a little bit, because we keep using it, that it really is intended to be someone who uh, doesn't do what some people have called snoopervision, but actually supervision, watching over, looking over, making sure things are moving in the right direction, but also trusting and honoring the fact that the people we supervise have incredible expertise, bring value, know things we don't know. And so it becomes a partnering kind of role. Before we go further, Jackie, would you just like to say a few words about who you are?
Sure. I'm Jackie Vorpal. I'm a clinical psychologist and I'm from the Choctaw Nation of Oklahoma. And I'm so excited to be here with all of you. It's so good to see all your faces. And, supervision, to me and in native communities is really walking beside your person that you are um supervising, and you may have more knowledge in certain areas that you're able to share, and then you're going to learn from your supervisee in other areas, and so it's a growth experience for both people, and it can be a lifelong relationship. And really, in our Native communities, it tends to be that kind of thing. I have supervisors, and like Holly, I call them mentors, and that's what they want to be called. And I like to be called that as well. Um, that now we're colleagues and now we're friends, and we share, things back and forth. So I'm excited to have this conversation with you guys.
All right. Thanks, Jackie. Perhaps you've heard or seen this phrase, people join organizations and they leave supervisors. I don't know how that resonates with you. My guess is that some of you are nodding gently or nodding very actively because that's been your experience, right? Or maybe you haven't left because of it, but you've certainly tampered down your expectations and hopes as a supervisee, because not all supervisors are created equally. And there are reasons for this. The truth of the matter is, and Holly alluded to this, is that many people become a supervisor by what I call by being the next warm body in the room, right? Who needs to step in that role. And so frequently people are not actually provided training on how to be an effective supervisor. So it's kind of like parenting in some ways. We kind of, fly by the seat of our pants sometimes. But I would say that uh, if this has been your experience, I'm sorry, but I also believe that there's a corollary to this, and that is that people join organizations and they often stay because of supportive supervisory relationships. Again, I've had many supervisors personally. I bet you've had many supervisors in your life. And they all are, some are more user-friendly than others. I'll just put it that way. But it's okay. It's okay. We can still learn from people because we all have our strengths and we all have our deficits. Um, I will say that there are common characteristics that people do appreciate around supervisors who are what you might consider effective, impactful. And so I'd like to invite you in the chat box actually to just list some of the things that you would say are characteristics that you value and appreciate in a supervisor. Whether or not you're receiving that or not, just list some of the things so that we can share together some of the things that are valued about supervisors. And I think this will give us a good picture perhaps of what we're trying to communicate here. So I'm seeing already grace and empathy and non-judgment, not a micromanager. Yep. A people person. Good. Caring, compassion. They keep coming. Experience, supportive, transparent, self-reflective. Yep. Supportive, listen, interested, professional, dedicated, not jealous. Interesting. Good one. Yeah. Yeah. And we can say this in lots of different ways. I have my own little laundry list, which I might share a few of those things with you too. But Bernice says, practice humility. Indeed, have a sense of it's not all about me and I'm not in control. Warm-hearted, strength of a moose. Fabulous. Yeah, metaphors. Gentle as a deer, open to new wisdom, experience, knows how to pause. Yeah, knows how to create space, safe space, right? Has a depth of care. They're warm, they're competent, they're gentle. They have a good sense of humor, like you do, Harry Brown. Yeah, so these are all things that I think people universally value in a supervisor. I would say a few things I might add include being um, someone who asks for your own ideas and thoughts and expertise before sharing your own supervisory expertise so that we draw out from people the expertise they have and allow that to be voiced and then either affirm it or maybe add to it, that kind of thing. I would also say that a good supervisor asks you how you learn best. Is it best for you to read materials, to listen to materials, to hear stories, to watch videos, to play, to role play, all of these kinds of things, but to match those learning styles. A good supervisor meets with people on a regularly scheduled, predictable basis. I am quite firm in my belief about that one. And it's not about the length of time or even the frequency necessarily. It's about that there's a regularly scheduled time to set aside where you know you can come and be in the presence of this person who will listen deeply, who will ask interesting questions, who will draw you out and have your growth and welfare at the first of at the top of their mind. They will foster an open learning environment. They'll promote risk-taking. They'll encourage you to get involved in other aspects of the organization, to develop your own leadership and teaching skills, perhaps. They'll provide direct, honest feedback, right? They'll demonstrate integrity. They'll model healthy boundaries, model how to handle conflict. They'll make it fun. They'll make it so you feel like, oh, this is great. I have a scheduled time to come to supervision and I'm eager to go, right? And hopefully there might even be a little food there, or it might be walking supervision where you go out and walk together rather than necessarily just sit. They also provide a voice for you within the organization to be an advocate around safety, around making organizational decisions, about a living wage, about adequate benefits, about grievances, and so on and so forth. Much more we could add, and I'm seeing some other things being added to the chat box. Yeah. Thank you all. I will carry on here, but thanks. Appreciate that very much. So let's see. This is a definition of supervision. It's one of many, as you can imagine, but it's a good one, and it's one which we can just pick apart a little bit and say it's a joint endeavor. There's that partnering role in which a practitioner, a staff person, with the help of a supervisor, attends to the needs of their clients. And they do this in a context that looks at not just the client relationship, but also the wider systemic context, the environmental context. And so by doing this, the goal is to improve the quality of the work of the supervisee, to transform their client relationships, to continuously develop themselves, their practice in the wider profession. One other brief definition I'll share with you that impacted me early on in my own career was that basically supervision is foremost for the benefit of our clients. And everything flows out from there. Now, there are many functions of supervision. When you become a supervisor, it's taking on a major responsibility, but an incredibly fulfilling responsibility, I think, because you're helping to mentor, you're helping people to grow. And so I'm going to just briefly go through a few of these functions of supervision. I don't know if you've maybe thought of it this way. People certainly have divided the functions in different ways, but we're going to look at administrative, evaluative, clinical, educative, and supportive functions. And so administrative functions might include things like carrying out maybe running a program, or maybe it might have to do with managing a special project or implementing a new program. Decisions being made about staffing needs, about budget allocations, scheduling vacations, right? Providing an organizational structure that allows access to the resources that are there. So everything from equipment, computers, to employee assistance programs, perhaps. Addressing organizational barriers. Maybe there are long wait lists. Maybe there are restrictive eligibility for services, or a lack of diversity in staff or interpretive services. Recruiting, hiring, onboarding, training, a whole thing of its own, which is critically important, I believe. Planning and organizing, structuring work and time management. And yes, there's more. Um, Translating policies and procedures, making them clear. Engaging in quality improvement and data monitoring. Things like maybe you want to be involved in finding out if trauma-informed practice, or motivational interviewing, or perhaps other kinds of so-called best practices are being implemented well. Or maybe it has to do with a prevention of youth suicide program, and sort of monitoring that, see how that's going, right? Managing resources and budget, evaluation, performance management. We could talk a lot about formal evaluation. I personally think that most evaluation happens in the day in, day out in an informal basis, and it's part of the relationship and it's built in. There's no sort of gotchas or no surprises. We evaluate and we provide feedback in day in and day out. There's also mediation skills required sometimes. For example, if staff are not getting along with one another, or maybe there's accusations or things like that, then there might be things that we need to be involved in mediating. I'm going to keep going, but I'll check back in the chat box here in a moment. But we also saying a little bit more about evaluative feedback. We want to do this in a compassionate and thoughtful, direct kind of way. It's all for the benefit of clients, remember. So any feedback we're giving to someone is in order to help that person perform at an even higher level. Evaluate adherence to whatever best practice your organization has adopted, and is wanting to foster managing disciplinary proceedings if needed, as needed. And then we talk about clinical supervision, educative. Not everybody is a clinician who's a supervisor, and that's okay. If you are, that's an added benefit, but you can also provide education, and if you can't provide it, you can certainly arrange for ways for people to learn new skills and to grow. One of the things we know about why staff stay in positions, in addition to having good supervision, is that when they have opportunities to learn and grow on an ongoing basis, as well as to do what they do best on a regular basis, those are ingredients that allow people to really, truly feel happy and satisfied in their work. And then, of course, there's the mentoring and the coaching piece, which is critical to all of this. So we talk about the supportive functions of supervision, and Jackie's already said something about this. There's a quote here that says, "The task of the supervisor is to help supervisees feel received, valued, understood, on the assumption that only then will they feel safe enough to review and challenge themselves as well as value themselves and their own abilities." In other ways, to be seen, to be heard, to be taken into account, which is the essential basis of trauma-informed care, right? Jackie, I wonder if you might want to add to this here.
Sure. Yeah. Supportive supervision is really, being there for for your supervisee when they're coming in and setting up clear expectations. And so when they come in, there is the safety and the structured space. So for some people, maybe they want to come in with their list of clients and that you're going to check in about, how are things going with each of them. It could also be how you open up your supervision. Some people may want to start with a breath or a prayer, or maybe they want to go outside and smudge, or maybe it's been extra hard and they're like, can we go for a walk and really pay attention to what nature has to teach us in this moment. It's fall, and so fall always teaches us that change is inevitable. And we can use this learning from nature and metaphor in what's happening. And we can model boundaries of, this is what I can do and this is what I can't do. And that helps our supervisee to also know that they can have boundaries, and it's healthy and safe to have boundaries, not only with me if I'm your supervisor, but also with your clients that come. And that self-care is so important. That part of this is boundaries allow us to have self-care. So it allows me to love myself and everyone else. It allows me to take care of myself and my community. And so by doing this, I'm modeling, hey, that, maybe I'm having a hard day and I'm letting my supervisee or my staff know this, that, if I'm a little distant, it's not anything to do with them, but I'm having a hard time. It doesn't mean we need to bare our soul, but it does mean that we need to give people a heads up with what's going on, which that's a practice of vulnerability. And with vulnerability, we connect and we feel heard and seen. And so, and then you also you talked about the consistency, that, that there is this supportive, steady presence, that if you are needed, you will be there. And if you're not able to be there, you're going to give your supervisee the time period, like, I can't talk right now, but I can talk in an hour. And so people learn, again, that's a boundary, but it's also, this is what I can do and I care about you and I'm here for you. So those are a few additional things that I'd like to add in.
Thank you, Jackie. And I'm looking at the chat box and I'm seeing some comments from Dr. Sean Haynes, for example. A mentor with a professional indigenous brilliance and brilliance in thought, action, ethics, being present with all, a voice, a song, a heart of listening care. Really emphasizes and supports what you're saying. We also know that, just to accentuate a few things you said, this is a relationship. It's a relational context that we're enabling staff to mobilize their own emotional energy to continue on in what can be heavily laden work, as Holly was speaking to before. Address the emotional barriers, taking a temperature of how are you doing emotionally? How are you doing in terms of everything that's coming at you? Or where are you experiencing joy in your work? Where are you experiencing concerns? Helping to inspire and enhance commitment and motivation. And certainly acknowledging secondary traumatic stress or vicarious trauma, which is a given. It's a given. You can't ignore it, and it can't make it not happen. But what we can do is we can acknowledge it, embrace it even, and recognize what it has to teach us, and also help us to find our own healthy boundariness around how we um, take care of ourselves, basically. And another quote, when people perceive their organizations as supportive and they experience lower levels of vicarious trauma, I'm sorry, when people perceive their organization to be supportive, they experience a lower level of vicarious trauma. All right. All right. We're going to talk a bit now about trauma exposure impact and the need for supportive supervision. Judith Herman, some of you know her work. She wrote a seminal book in 1992 called Trauma and Recovery. This was when even talking about trauma started to be a thing. Not that trauma has never existed before, but we started naming it. And she says that traumatic events overwhelm the ordinary systems of care that give people a sense of control, connection, and meaning. And so she also says in that book that particularly for kids who are exposed to traumatic situations and upbringings and even in-home trauma, that it's having to put your trust in someone or something that is inherently untrustworthy. And as we all know, that has an impact on people. Another book that Jackie recommended, and you can comment on this, is a book I haven't read, but I'd love to. But can you say more, Jackie, about this?
Yeah, so Eduardo Duran, he is a tribal psychologist and he has so many words of wisdom. But the healing of the soul wound, a soul wound really resonates with a lot of Native folks of that trauma is not individual. Trauma really impacts us at a cellular level. It's our soul. It's our community. It's our ancestors. So it is really, really deep. And I think Western psychology is catching up, that they're starting to notice, like, okay, this is, there's more to this than, just the physical symptoms here. But Indigenous people have known this forever. This is our brilliance, is that, this is a relationship between our body, our soul, and our community. And when we talk about trauma in supervision, we already know that the supervisor has probably experienced trauma and the supervisee. And we are cognizant of that. We feel that in our body. And when we show up for one another, we are showing up actively listening, leaning in, wanting to walk beside, and if needed, to carry the individual when needed. And Eduardo Duran, he gives so many good examples of cases that I really recommend this. So we can go on to the next slide. And this is a quote: trauma is more than psychological injury, it's a wounding of the soul. And like I said, soul really is talking about these intergenerational wounds that have been inflicted and that are stories that have been silenced. And that, we are not just surviving, we're here to thrive. And we want to encourage people coming up to take our place and to be our friend and to be our colleague, because we want a lifelong relationship. And that's really the goal of supervision and what I see in tribal communities.
Yeah, I love that. Thank you. And thanks for that recommendation. While we're talking about books and quotes, I'll share one more with you. Some of you know the work of Gabor Mate. He had written a book in the past called In the Realm of Hungry Ghosts, and a fabulous book. But this one is called The Myth of Normal. Came out in 2022. But there were several quotes that just stood out there. One is that trauma is not what happens to you, but what happens inside you. Now, to be honest, I would probably state this a little differently because clearly there are events and occurrences and experiences that are trauma inducing. There's no question about that. And we can call that trauma, but trauma is not only what happens to you, but it's what happens also inside of you. People respond to traumatic events in many different ways, given their own who they are, their own factors of safety and resilience. But what we know is that trauma has an impact on our insides, on the way we view the world, view others, on our own sense of self, who we are in the world. It can have lasting effects on, as Jackie was saying, our physical, social, emotional, and spiritual well-being. Now, I want to just say here too that trauma is not only trauma exposure to trauma isn't something that within there's no hope. Some of you have heard the term trauma post-traumatic growth. And we know that while we would never wish trauma on anyone, it is something that can be a catalyst for helping us become more wise, more brilliant, more empathic, more in tune with ourselves and with others. And so I will just say that we don't have to call it post-traumatic growth, but what we can say is we can learn from trauma. It can be a teacher for us. And many of you know this, obviously, very much firsthand. And yes, we can be wounded in multiple ways by bad things happening, but also by good things not happening. And again, as you know very well, this has been the experience of tribal groups, the tribes that the U.S. government and white supremacy people have come in an attempt to squash your entire way of being, your lives, your way of making a living. I don't have to tell you all this, but this incursion and assault on Native people's land has been bad in terms of bad things happening, but it's also deprived opportunities for good things happening many times. And so that's part of this whole podcast or this webcast is about trying to counteract that. So this is, as we wrap up here soon, just a slide to have us do a little thought piece again. I would welcome and invite you to share in the chat box. What are things that you think about that trauma steals from us, both individually and as a collective? Anything that you comes to mind? I think it's important that we be aware of how this impacts us at so many different levels. Certainly trust, Sandy says, absolutely. A sense of safety, of joy, of connection, yeah, of hope, security, sense of hope and security, yep, peace, autonomy, our innocence, absolutely, sense of autonomy, yep, our creativity, rest, yeah, all of these things and more. And so these are just some things. I was listening to you and then I quickly typed in what you said and then added a few more things, but here they are. But these are the things that oftentimes are impacted, some more than others. But you can see how this is a whole person impact on people. And we need to find healing ways and healing practices to help people discover, recover what it is that they either never had or used to have and don't any longer. A loss of power, self-confidence, self-love, self-worth, yeah, all of those things. So a few more words. When we talk about trauma-informed mentoring or supervision, we're really just simply talking about taking what we know about what we know about trauma and its impact, and then combining that with what we know about best practice skills around being a good supervisor. And so we take those two together and make the most of that and combine those areas of expertise. And so a trauma-informed supervisor is someone who really, the importance of it is that these are ways that we actually help to foster employees' personal professional development, to help them grow their clinical skills, to make sure that best practices, whatever those are, best indigenous healing practices, and other things are being effectively put into practice, assuring accountability and promoting self-care and wellness. And then most importantly, as said before, improving client outcomes is part of what trauma-informed supervision, I think, does effectively. And so we can also say that trauma-informed supervision is especially relevant where we serve clients who are likely to have histories of trauma exposure and staff who experience secondary traumatic or primary trauma exposure through their own lives and experience in clinical work. And so that's not surprising, of course. So I guess just to say, this is kind of a summary statement in some ways, but clients get better services and care. Staff are able to cope more effectively. Staff become more resilient and able to grow in their own way. Staff stay on the job longer and don't leave as readily, and reduces the level of vicarious trauma that people experience. And this focuses on understanding the causes and impact of traumatic stress on supervisees and of the people for whom they provide help. We model and foster principles and practice of trauma-informed, trauma-responsive care. And that notion of being, as supervisors, more responsive than reactive, because trauma creates reactivity, unresolved trauma creates reactivity, and it gets passed on. But responsiveness means that we've learned to learn from our trauma and place it in a way that it's not overwhelming us any longer, as it might have used to. And so we want to be there as a solid presence, as so many of you have already noted, a solid, kind, thoughtful, compassionate presence. Jackie, who is that in that photo there?
That's one of my mentors. And, you know, she has been all the things we've been talking about: direct, kind, loving, able to gently direct me when I'm going off course. And, you know, we really rely on each other. And in Native communities, the relationship is so key. But I think this is a great place, Ken, for us to have reflections, and to just pause here and to see how, you know, if Livia wants to jump in and we can hear the audience and what they've heard. And I'm looking forward to that.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Jackie and Ken and Holly, for such a rich presentation. Listening to all three of you, and you know, I'm just happy that we are continuing this conversation next month as well, because there's a lot here. And I know that you got some participation feedback already for some of your questions, but I invite folks to share some reflections. I do see Dr. Haynes having one question, but I don't know if that's a specific statement earlier, where she says, "Is it me or the society or environment around me?" Is that anything you want to lift up? Go ahead. I see your hand. Go ahead, Dr. Sean.
To encourage you, panel, I work with the UN level at times, and in defining social determinants, I'll write it in the chat box in a minute. They often list things like income, poverty, colonization, racism, and then way down at the bottom, they have culture, the land and the environment. And so the health is at the bottom of the list, and the oppression's at the top of the list in social determinants. So when I speak about society and how society in the vagueness can impact a person's view of themselves. I take that list and I flip it around. I said, look at this list. Has any of this impacted you? Oh, yes, Dr. Sean. Yes, Dr. Sean. I go, okay, let's flip it around. Now, has this impacted you? Oh, yeah, I know who I am. And then they can go through it with me in dialogue. So it gives me a bit of a framework. And Duran and some of that work goes through it beautifully. So it allows for that conversation about, is this me? Or is this like the world out there? Is this me, or is this a forest fire and just came through, or we just had an earthquake? You know, what is this? Trauma. Trauma happens. But who I am in context of it can be flipped around and how we perceive it. So I encourage you through it because you have it in your words all over the place. But to look at social determinants, it's part of that new language about society. Thank you so much for what you've done.
And Jackie and Ken, I don't know if either one of you want to say anything, but I love the idea of looking at frames and, you know, ways to kind of, you know, look at having a way to think about this in different ways. And I see, Rick Escobedo, you're talking about working, you have replaced the word trauma with disconnection with some communities. Do you want to say anything about that?
Oh, hello everyone. Yeah, well, I mean, the word trauma really carries a stigma with some communities and it's with just with that alone, the people, you know, have not liked it and often connected to, you know, being victims and or broken. So what really happens I see and having lived experience is just having been disconnected from self and community and spirit. So I work with people on connecting them, reconnecting them to spirit and community and their resources that can help them. Yeah, thank you.
And I really appreciate that comment. I think, you know, we begin to think that trauma sort of is the whole person or it colors everything. And it's not just what happens to be. People have hopes and aspirations and dreams and you know, things that they want to be and they want to belong and they want to be part of something. And so I would agree. I mean, all words tend to lose their meaning or tend to shift in their meaning perhaps. And I think trauma is maybe a good one for now, but I'd love the idea of disconnection as an alternative to that. I think it's very much that, and more perhaps.
Yeah, and I this one last thing, and I certainly do a lot of psychoeducation around the science of it too, like epigenetics and it's more of a programming. It's the epi, it's not the genes, which often people get um confused with or don't quite understand. So if you're saying it's in my genes, then that sounds more like it's a permanent thing, but it's not in your genes. It's just the programming you've gotten. So we all like to update our phones daily, so we should be updating our own programs daily. Yeah.
It's just in the pocket of your genes, not your whole genes.
Yeah, I like that. Pocket.
Well, again, I'm so happy that this is a conversation is going to continue next month. I'm going to turn it over to, I believe, Holly.
Yeah. Great. Yeah, this is really great. You know, what we intended to do with this part one of the conversation today is to kind of stir the pot of your thinking on mentoring, or some call supervision, and provide some basic foundational information about the different components of supervision, and then focus on trauma-informed or disconnect-informed supervision. Next month, well, this is a link to the evaluation, and next month will be part two of this, and Jackie's going to lead the conversation next month. It'll focus more on, I saw the comment about resilience. Thank you for saying that. and cultural practices for trauma-informed supervision. So it'll be a great conversation next month. And Jackie's also going to talk about not all of our programs have the capacity to have a supervisor or a mentor. And so she's also going to share some alternative ways to get that support if that doesn't exist in your organization. So it'll be a great continuation of the conversation. So I really thank you all for joining us and for all of the active comments. And Rick, thank you for your comments as well and adding a new thought to our conversation about disconnect. Bernice, is there anything else that I missed that we need to touch base on before we leave here, or before we start our closing video, which is, you all know we always open and close with a video.
Nope. Just if you have any problems with the Cardia or evaluation, just email myself or Holly. Thank you.
Great. Okay. All right. Well, enjoy this closing video and know that we are here for you. We designed this for you. We have 3 partners. The newest partner we have is the 7 Generations Tribal Behavioral Health Center of Excellence at the University of Arizona. And you will see us again next month. So we'll close with this. One of my favorite videos of brilliance of young people, and it's called Home to Me. And they say, if you listen to it, keep us safe, keep us free. And they're talking to us.
Keep the always that we've always had.
Holly, I'm assuming that Lee is going to show this. I don't have
This is a
it.
place where we love the land. Let's work to show our pride. Keep us safe, keep us free, like it used to be. Don't wanna be tied down. We find love where we're from and beat against the drums. It's a beautiful sound.
From the ground up, we'll find the path home. Feel pulled by the sun, wish I can go. We learn from the past, now we can grow. We're promised a chance to plants show. Go big, go far, there are no limits. I wanna see change, so my soul lives it. They cut down the trees while we blow kisses. Defend our home while they dismiss us.
It feels like home to me. It feels like home to me. Sometimes it's hard to find the words to say home to me. Don't be afraid when you're falling in fast. There's something in the unknown. I held on to my culture, it's been calling me back. There is a story of hope. Winds of change long ago, hear the chants far and low. Our voices cried out for rain. Then it rained, brought us life, gave us faith, gave us sight. To see that we shall remain.
Let your spirit soar as far as it can. Try not to be reminded by the scars from the past. Rise from the ruins, keep protecting the land. Don't take it for granted, can't neglect what we have. Stand together as a nation, express what we feel. True conversation, address what is real. Connected to the land, we are one with each other. This is our home to discover.
It feels like home to me. It feels like home to me.
Gotta stay on point like the fastest arrow. Bring hope to the people of grassy narrows. Want peace in the land, can't go back to battles. Eighth fire in action, casting shadows. From old to the new, let us show you the truth. Light up the path, there's a glow in the youth. Bruise you to the world, this is where we live. So let the journey begin.
It feels like home to me. 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 Sometimes it's hard to find the words to say you're home to me. Sometimes it's hard to find the words to say you're home to me.
One of my most favorite videos. You can see their confidence grow from day 1 to day 3 when they finish this, and it's remarkable what they did. And I love the keep us safe, keep us free. You all have a good, brilliant day. Stay safe. See you next month.
Lee, you're faster than I am with putting the people in the waiting. I don't know how you're doing it, but every time I click on somebody, either got me or.
It's a competition. I'm doing the
I
same thing with
know.
you.
I know.
Well, good job, everybody. That was
that
great.
was
We ran short of time,
wonderful.
and thank you, Jackie, for seeing my message. And I knew we were running short of time, so Jackie did her job and cut it when it needed perfect.